So today we are going to study about uh, general geography concerning earth facts and figures. So we are going to look at the shape of the earth and the size. So looking at the shape of the earth, the actual shape of the earth is called as an oblate spheroid because it is flat at the poles and bulging at the equator, and the evidence is shown below. So we see that the north-south diameter is shorter than the east-west diameter by about 43 kilometers. So these are numbers you need to remember, that the polar diameter is 12,714 kilometers and the equatorial diameter is 12,756 kilometers. And that is why we say it's a oblate spheroid. The word geoid that we have here is basically used to look at the shape of the earth with reference to the only the shape of the surface of the earth. We can see here that it is quite an irregular shape in this picture, and the darker areas like red and all are very high areas, and the dark blue and all is very deep, right? And if you take out all the water, so it's mainly with reference, the word geoid is only used to show the shape of the earth with reference to the outer surface, not with the rest of the earth. This is a common mistake that we have in our books that say that geoid is the shape of the earth. So the geoid is. So can we cancel and start again? Vatsala?
Yes, madam.
Yes. Today we are going to look at part of general geography, which is Earth facts and figures, where we look at the shape of the Earth and its size. And we'll also look at the relationship of the Earth with reference to the Sun and with reference to the Moon. Looking at the shape, the correct term that we use for showing the shape of the Earth is an oblate spheroid, which means that it is flat at the poles and it is bulging at the equator. The evidence is shown by this diagram. As you can see that the polar diameter is 12,714 kilometers, whereas the equatorial diameter is 12,756 kilometers, a difference of about 43 kilometers. So this shows that the poles are flattened and it is bulging at the equator. But for all purposes, we know that the Earth is round because 43 kilometers in when you consider the size of the Earth is actually almost negligible. But a common term that is used to show the shape of the Earth is geoid. Now, geoid is only the shape of the outer surface of the Earth with reference to the height or depth below sea level. So if we take off all the water, this is what our Earth looks like. And that is what geoid is. And we use the word geodetic in terms of height or depth below sea level and or above sea level. And this is what it looks like. So the dark colors here are the higher points, and the in red, dark red is the higher points. And as you go down towards the sea, the colors become lighter. And then you have a dark blue that shows very deep points. So that exactly is the geoid. So the geoid here is basically used to describe the irregular shape of the Earth's surface. And it is actually related to the gravity and created by the gravity field. Essentially, this is a representation of the Earth in terms of sea level for every position on Earth. Another term we use is also ellipsoidal, which means egg-shaped or spheroid, and that is basically it's not really round. It has it is bulging at some points, and so we use the word ellipsoidal. Since the flattening occurs at the poles due to centrifugal force, that is why we normally use the correct terminology as the description as the oblate spheroid. Other facts and figures is that we just mentioned that we have an average radius, and that's 12,740 kilometers, average diameter, sorry, and therefore the radius is 6,370 kilometers, north south. So these are figures you need to learn and remember and memorize. So an easy way to remember it is the average, of course, is 740. 12,000 is a common unit, And then the difference is about 43 kilometers. And therefore, if you could remember any one of these and add or subtract 43 to it, and that's how you will be able to remember what 43 or 42, what the other values are. So you may get this question as match the following. Then Earth's circumference is about 40,000 kilometers. That is, as you go around it from the along the equator, 40,075, and it's just a little bit less from north to south. The composition of the Earth. Now, this is made up of several chemical elements, of which oxygen is the maximum, followed by aluminum, iron, sodium. You have magnesium, you have calcium, and so on. Sometimes you may be asked to put this list in ascending or descending order. Like they may give you just a few of these. So you just to know in general, like, what are the elements that make up the Earth as such. And knowing these values would be important. So continuous memorization is very important. So you could put it up on a piece of paper and keep looking at it every day so that you just remember these values. Looking at the Earth's axis now, if you look at the Earth in terms of how the Earth's axis is and why it is important. So we look at the Earth's axis as we all know that every planet is not really straight. It is many planets are tilted. Some planets are tilted more than the other, and rotation takes place around this particular tilt, and that tilt is known as the axis. In our case, on our Earth, and we use it for all planets too, the axis passes through the North and South Pole, and in the axis of the Earth is inclined at 23.5 degrees from the vertical to the right. So if you see the figure here, you have the axis tilting from the horizontal as 23.5 degrees, 23.5 degrees to the right. And then we have from the plane, that is from the horizontal plane, that was the vertical plane, sorry, this is the horizontal plane, it is 66.5 degrees. So these two numbers should actually be familiar to you, because if we take the term as 23.5 degrees is basically the number we give to the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, and 66.5 degrees is the number we give to the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle. The reason we have these numbers is because all latitudes, the names I have mentioned are actually latitudes, are drawn perpendicular to the axis, because it depends on the sun's rays and so on and so forth. Right. Now, the importance of the axis is that you can name the various important latitudes because of the sun's rays again, as well as this also, axis also helps to understand how seasons change. So in the diagram here, you can see that at North Pole, which is 90 degrees, the sun's rays are actually coming in from 0 degrees, right? And what is 0 degrees as the equator is basically the sun's rays coming in at 90 degrees. So these latitudes are actually angular measurements, which we will do in a different topic, right? And the major latitudes are all based on these two numbers as 23.5 degrees and 66.5 degrees. And this divides the Earth into a very important aspect of what we call as the heat zones. So the torrid zone is hot mainly because the sun's rays during the afternoon are the hottest. And as we go towards the polar region, the sun's rays are much lower in the atmosphere and they are colder. And the sun's rays come in from almost 0 to below the horizon, and that's why it's extremely cold there. So this gives us an understanding as to why temperatures decrease as we move from the equator to the polar region. The other effects are basically, like I said, the seasons. So you can see that the angle of the rays of the sun changes from season to season. This particular position of the Earth is during the summer solstice, when the Earth is tilted towards the sun. So on June 21st, the 90-degree angle of the sun, and this is the midday sun. When we talk of zenith, I use the word zenith here, meaning midday, which will be explained later. So the midday sun is 90 degrees over Tropic of Cancer. Then as you go up higher, it is almost 0 degrees at 66.5 degrees. And if you see the rays of the sun in the southern hemisphere, it's just the opposite, right? So here is where we are looking at seasons, and seasons happen when the sun's rays move from the zenith to either north or south of it. So when northern hemisphere has summer, then southern hemisphere has winter. 6 months later, when the earth is tilted away from the sun, then you will find that you have northern hemisphere having winter and southern hemisphere having summer. Right. So we're looking at this diagram. This axis also is responsible for our daylight hours, going from long daylight hours to short daylight hours. So in school, you have definitely studied about the longest day and the shortest day, right? Whether you have understood it or not, I do not know, but to explain it here, it's very simple. As you can see, if you can imagine that the earth is rotating now, then along the equator, we have equal day, equal night at all times. So this is the position of the earth on June 21st when it is tilted towards the sun. So 12 hours of daylight and we have 12 hours of darkness, right? So in this you can see the radius. You can take the equator as being the radius and the radius being equally divided into day and night, right? And since our earth is a spherical body, the remaining 6 hours are at the back. But if you go up to Tropic of Cancer now, Tropic of Cancer here seems to have longer daylight hours. As you can see, the line that the Tropic of Cancer line has more of daylight than it has darkness. And compare it with Tropic of Capricorn, then we have more of darkness and less. So that is where we have the longest day on June 21st in the northern hemisphere will be the shortest day in the southern hemisphere. And we call this position as the summer solstice. You also need to look at the Arctic Circle. As you can see, in one rotation of 24 hours, the Arctic Circle and the regions above the Arctic Circle have complete daylight for 24 hours. Similarly, in the southern hemisphere, in the Antarctic Circle, in one 24-hour period, it has complete darkness. So this is what we look at, having 24 hours of daylight or darkness in the polar region. But it is not really 24 hours. It starts from 1 minute and goes on to 24 hours. 24 hours only for, not for 6 months, but for just 3 months. And then the remaining 1.5 months on either side is increasing daylight or decreasing daylight, either in the North Pole or in the South Pole. So this is the significance of the tilt of the earth. And then as you go around the earth here, as you go in this thing, you can say you have various positions, right? We will do this again when we study about revolution and how the amount of radiation or the amount of heat received varies as it goes from June to December, right? So we have equal day and equal night in between, that is equinox. I'm sure you know about that. And you have the two solstice positions on the other side. Then looking at earth movements. So earth movements here are rotation, which you know is the spinning of the earth on its axis. And it takes exactly 23 hours and 54 minutes, which gives us day and night. This is also responsible for the deflection of the winds. The direction of rotation is from west to east. We will talk about deflection of winds in another chapter when we do air pressure and winds. But for now, it is only, you need to know the effects of rotation. Then we have the speed of rotation. So here is where at the poles, the speed of rotation is 1700 kilometers per hour. Sorry, 0 kilometer, 0. And at the equator, it is 1700 kilometers per hour. So the speed of rotation is decreasing because obviously the surface area is less. So the greater the surface area, a greater surface area is being covered in 124-hour period when you compare it to the poles. That is when over the equator, it's obviously much faster. Then we have revolution. So revolution is termed as a movement of the earth around the sun, and it takes 365.25 days. And you all know that the direction of revolution is anti-clockwise. And the effect of revolution, along with the inclination of the earth, is the occurrence of the 4 seasons. So revolution by itself does not cause seasons. It's only because we are tilted at have an axis that is tilted of at 23.5 degrees to the right, is why we have the four seasons. So summer, autumn, and winter and spring. Now these four seasons are only found in the mid-latitude regions, which I told you ahead were the temperate regions. If you go to the tropical regions, we have mostly summer, and if you go to the polar regions, it is mostly winter. So that's the Earth rotation and revolution. Then we have certain positions of the Earth between the Earth and the Sun. The average distance between the Earth and the Sun is 150 million kilometers, and that is equivalent to what we call as 1 astronomical unit. But actually, in actual fact, that's the average distance. But in actual fact, we have what we call as the aphelion position, which is on July 4th, which is where the Earth is about 152.1 million kilometers away from the Sun. And we have a perihelion position on January 3rd, right? So these are fixed numbers that we have, fixed dates of the position of the Sun, of the Earth and the Sun relationship, that these are fixed dates that we have as January 3rd and July 4th. And you need to learn these dates for your UPSC exam. Then we have features of solstice. So here, very briefly, summer solstice, June 21st. Then summer in the northern hemisphere with the longest day and shortest night. Winter in the southern hemisphere with shortest day and longest night. So the examiners may try to confuse you by saying summer solstice on June 21st and talk about southern hemisphere. So you just need to be reading the question correctly, reading the answers correctly in order to know that you're ticking the right answer. Similarly, we have winter solstice on December 22nd, right? And you have winter in northern hemisphere, which is the shortest day and the longest night, and just the opposite in the southern hemisphere. So that's your summer solstice position, and that's your winter solstice position. Okay. Then we have the features of equinox. So equinox is September 23rd and March 21st. Everywhere on Earth, including the polar region, you have exactly 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. So the sun will rise approximately at 6 a.m. and set at 6 p.m. depending on your standard time and other time zones. So this in brief is information about the Earth and the sun, right, of equinox and solstice and so on. Now, the Earth and the Moon, just very briefly to tell you, have an average distance of 384,403 kilometers, right? And we just round it off to 385. And of course, it has various positions, right? And we call these positions as perigee and apogee. Perigee, if you have a full moon, say, for example, if you have a full moon on June 23rd, then that is the perigee position, full moon, and then exactly 2 weeks later, you have a new moon, and that's the apogee. And these dates are not fixed. These dates are changing because the lunar system on Earth is different. Because the sun moon takes exactly 28 days, and it's not 1 month. So the dates keep on changing. So there's no fixed date for perigee or apogee, but we get the information about the supermoon. So the supermoon is when the moon is the closest to us, right? And that's when we see the supermoon, sometimes called as the blue moon, and so on and so on. Right. So I hope you find this topic interesting and have understood some basic concepts.